Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast. Today I have Cara back with us from her Startline podcast. If you're not listening to her podcast, do that. And today we're going to talk about rituals, but also we're going to talk about crate to gate, which sort of happens within the ritual. So first, I'll let Cara say hi and introduce herself.
Hi, Julie. Thanks for having me back. I am off a whirlwind trip, travel, follow judge bonanza of agility. So, pardon me if I slur my words, and also I have a puppy. So,
No,
yes, and
no
again,
worries.
behind on recording my podcast just because life has once again gotten in my way.
It as life tends to do. Yeah,
But because
so
you're ritualistic and you schedule me, I show up for this.
that's right. I did. We scheduled this a couple weeks ago, even knowing
We
trying to
did,
keep
and I
both
told
of
you, I said, if
ourselves
I don't,
honest.
you left it pretty open and flexible for me. And I said, if we don't put something down, it's not happening.
Yeah, I think that goes for a lot of our lives, actually. So no worries
Yes.
there. So we, of course, can talk about any topic for any amount of time because that's who we are. But I was thinking that like the group sort of needs a refresher on rituals. And of course, I talk about rituals, meaning from the second you open your eyes in the morning on a trial day to the time that you like walk to the line. Like, what does that look like? And the reason I care about all of that is I think that there's so many things that you can control in that moment. Like you can control what you're wearing. Like you don't need to be running around the house looking for leggings, the morning of. You can have your lunch packed. You can have the dog treats, the jackpot ready to go. You can have all that kind of stuff. You can walk your dog and da 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 da. And you talk about a lot, specifically, I should say, honing in on the crate to gate aspect of that. So that's kind of where I wanted to spend more time today, because I think most people, I think, can get dressed in the morning and can get the treats out and all those kinds of things. And while there's aspects to that, like walking the dog and, doing some other things that I would like to be more habitual, maybe, I think everybody does want to focus on crate to gate and why that matters so much. So maybe you could just give
Well,
us like a level set of like how you think about
sure,
it.
but I do think we should do another episode on the morning rituals because even when in my travels, I
Yeah,
packed my outfits. I laid out all the outfits and I packed them by day and then in
same.
ascending order so that I could
Yes.
get them from my, because, anyways,
Oh,
I
to
could go, but
incriminate myself though, I have printed out like for specialties when I'm really gone a long time. I went to the extent, and I don't care who laughs at me, to print out day like words on like cardstock. So it literally says like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So that when I'm packing, it's literally like my pants are like folded around the shirt and like the
yeah,
bra and
yeah.
everything, right? And then just slid into that stack. Oh
Well,
yeah.
here's what
Yeah.
it boils down to, which we could talk about another time, but this will lead into Crate to Gate
Yeah,
is
I think it's
the
related.
the morning rituals or the life rituals, the getting your jackpots ready the night before, ordering your food, all that stuff. Because I do raw, so I have to order food in advance. All of that is setting yourself up for success. And I think
Yes.
the crate to gate is setting your dog up for success. And that's giving them they have to think less, they have to process less stress, they have to they can live in this world. We know that dogs pattern well. So if you've
Right.
created this pattern and your dog is like, oh, we're in that pattern, cool, I know what to expect,
Exactly.
then I think you're just taking your morning ritual of setting yourself up for success so you can wake up late and still survive because you packed everything,
Yep.
and you're setting that to your dog's ability to be successful. You're reducing as many variables as you can for them to have issues. And there's always going to be issues. There's going to be you run out of cookies because next five people butt in front of you because they have conflict,
Yep. Right.
or you have too many cookies and you don't know where to put them and you're like panicking because you have the table's like 5 feet, 100 feet down the other way. There's or the gate person's like, don't put cookies there. There's a lot there's a lot that can go on that can mess with your ritual, your crate to
Yeah.
gate ritual. But I think having one, and I spent a lot of time with my first dog figuring it out. Then I
Same.
spent the next few dogs figuring out what was best for them and trying different things. I had no concept of a crate to gate ritual with Debbie. Zero. And then I had to figure one out because we had so many issues along the way. And with her, and I always say this isn't for everybody, but it's something to consider. We're generally taught, this is a blanket generalization, that you should have some kind of food to keep your dog's attention on you prior to the gate. And
Hmm.
either if you have a dog that stresses up, which they get really crazy or anxious, you're going to ask for calming behavior, sits and downs and looks. And if you have
Yep.
a dog that's kind of meh but won't play with toys and you need to get them ramped up, you ask for fun like spins and jumps and high
Right.
touches. And
Yep. I was
so
taught all
that's
that too.
right. So that's kind of what I think a lot of us are taught in our agility classes, and that's commonplace, and that there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, and that is the meat and potatoes to a lot of people's crate to gate routine. I do think that if you're having trouble inside of the ring or outside, but if you're specifically having trouble inside of the ring, you need to step back and back chain, right? When we mess up a sequence, was it that obstacle or was it the four obstacles leading up to it where you didn't set your dog on
Right.
the right
Right.
line? So this is the
Yep.
same thing. Are the issues that you're having in the ring, specifically if you're dealing with any kind of stress or a dog that's very different in training versus trialing, what are you doing to set them up for success prior to getting into the ring?
Yes.
Do they know all of the expectations and expected behaviors from you and them that are going to happen? Because the other thing too is you're going to get weird. That's your realm, Julia,
Yep.
where you're like dealing with the mental.
Yep.
If you can have as much of the routine and the ritual normalized, then I'm not saying you should get weird, but it allows a little bit of leeway for you to get weird because your dog's like, okay, we're going in the ring. She sometimes gets like this, but this is cool because I'm gonna get 6 cookies. I'm gonna do 14 spins, and they just know the deal.
Yeah. Right.
So,
Right.
but I think it really starts. I mean, we could go far back to when you wake up in the morning, but it does start prior to even touching the crate, right? Before you even open the crate. And I'll focus mostly on that, but I just also want to say that I have a couple friends that when we walk at trials, we keep walking, we run into each other. We're on the same quote unquote walk schedule. And it's because you have to know your dog. Is your dog a dog that needs to rest between runs? Or is your dog that, my Wendy, she needs a rest, but she also needs to keep limber and moving because otherwise she'll get
Mm.
too deep into slumber or she comes out vibrating. And
Okay.
so I need to make certain that her needs are met. And
Yep.
so I have pre-trial rituals for her that have to
Yep.
set her up for success. And I had to do it this weekend. It was a little tough because I was staying at an Airbnb that did not have a fenced in yard.
Mm.
And not that I need fence, but we were on this like
No.
busy road on a hill and a mountain. It was weird. It was weird.
Right.
So, and I did find a park nearby, but on Saturdays it was fairly busy. And regardless, I need to have about 5 to 10 throws of her ball. It does not need to be far. It does not need to be anywhere, it just has to have grass and safe surface. Because if I don't, no matter how good my ritual is from crate to gate, Wendy has an edge that I can't get off of her.
Yep. Yeah.
And she will pick lines in the course because paying attention to me is overridden by the need to run fast and straight because she's a boxer and
Yeah.
they were bred to just run fast and straight and take down something. And so
Yep.
she's not going to take down the judge or anything like that, but she wants to run fast and straight and see stuff. So
Yep.
I have had to work diligently before I even put her in the crate to take that edge off.
Right.
Then when she comes out of the crate, I have had the flip side. I have been lately messing around with kind of, I guess this is the realm of nutrition. And I won't go deep into
Mm-hmm.
this, but I need, when Wendy gets to, because I've taken this edge off, and depending on when the class is, if it's 45 minutes from when I've run her, we're usually solid. She's good. She's had the edge taken off of her and she hasn't fallen into a deep slumber. But if I take the edge off and I show up as worker coordinator and I have to work 2 classes before I even run, so she's
Yeah.
down for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, that is too much sleep for her. And
Ah.
she's
Yep.
tired. So I have found through various friends, we've tried little honey sticks.
Oh
I give
yeah.
her little honey
Yep.
sticks.
Yep. Yep.
Now I found these and this is just for me, but just because they have honey, goat's milk, blueberries, some kind of other sugar in it. They're made by Honest Kitchen. They smell like little blueberry cookies. They're delicious. I can, post and everybody. I'm not promoting the product, but I'm just saying I found this cookie that represents to Wendy wake up, get up. She gets one
Ah,
for coming out of the crate. It has all the little nutrient packed, quick glucosamine energy that she needs.
okay.
And it, it, it's like this, I don't know, bridge, this gap that communicates to her, we're about to run and I need you on point. No
Hmm.
sleepy Wendy.
Yeah. I think I need the
So
name of that product.
yeah, it's made by Honest Kitchen. They're great, and they've been sold out on Chewy forever. So I think I've told too many people.
Oh,
They have a
funny.
peanut butter version and a goat's milk version. They're great.
Well,
Vanilla.
and
It's
I've
like
used
vanilla.
Perk Me Up, is the other thing
Yep.
Nature's Pharmacy sells. I've used Perk Me Up for sure, which is like molasses and a bunch of
Yep.
sugars. And in a pinch, I've just grabbed a bunch of Nutter Butters
Yep.
for
I've done that. I've done
that.
bananas. I've tried a whole bunch of things,
Yeah.
and I think they all worked. But I don't always have banana chips, and I wasn't always. It was hard to always have these things. I found that these
Right.
treats I could always have,
Yep.
and they were easy. They were in my bag. It's something that works for me, and that's the other thing with your ritual. You might find something that works for your dog, but if you're going to let them down, like banana chips, I was sold on banana chips because they seem to work, and they're so cheap. You can get them at Trader Joe's for like $1.50, and I thought it was phenomenal. So, because the dog ones are
Right,
eighteen
right.
dollars for a 3 ounce bag.
Exactly.
So yeah. So, anyways, I messed around with that for a lot of the time because Wendy has had some energy struggles both up and down. We also had some grief and then false pregnancies, and we've had a hot mess going on.
Yeah.
But I have finally, after, she's 3, I feel like I have a really good crate to gate routine with her. And I messed around with things. I did reintroduce food in the what I would call a lineup. So
Okay.
I am not, depending on the dog, a proponent for what we were taught. Have that food in the lineup and get your dog's attention. And the reason is, I agree 100% that having food in a lineup as part of your ritual does get your dog's attention and does build pattern and all that stuff. However, it does not help fade or make it any easier for the transition from line to inside that gate.
Well, my thing about food is the food is neutral, but I feel like the people, the handlers, are the ones who need the food because they're
Yes.
comfortable. Like if you watch handlers, and I've done it, I've been that handler, so I'm not judging. This is like I've done it.
And I'm
When
not
you
saying it's right or
stand
wrong.
there,
I'm just saying
correct. But
some of us use it incorrectly.
right. And I've been the handler who's standing there, not looking at my dog, watching what's going on in the ring and
Just feeding.
mindlessly feeding so
Yep.
that they're behaving, right? They're doing what they're just sitting next to me and I know they're not getting in trouble, whatever trouble looks like, because there's dogs around or whatever. And I'm watching the ring. Basically, I'm admitting that I'm using it in cases where I'm disconnected, but I need my dog not to leave. So I just become a human Pez dispenser and just mindlessly feed. What am I feeding for? Nothing. Really, I'm feeding for nothing. I'm feeding for like the dog's just sitting there. And so I think that it is a crutch. It is useful and it can
Absolutely.
also be a crutch. Like I don't want to say like I'm against food because the next time I walk to the ring, I will have food in my hand. So like I'm
Well,
not
right,
against
right.
it.
And
I just want it to
90%
be
of the
more
people around me will too.
thoughtful. Right. I just
Right.
more
And I also
planned.
think I'm gonna respectfully disagree that it's neutral.
Okay.
Food for many dogs is not neutral, it's reinforcement. And so more neutral would be, I would say, petting or verbal praise. That's
Okay.
more still a reward, but less high value. I think food, and we're not. Let's be honest, we're not. Some of us might. We're not lined up with Charlie Bears. We usually have cheese or their meatballs or part of what they're going to get for the jackpot or lower value of it. But generally, I think that it's not as neutral. And then what happens is these dogs are sometimes mindlessly getting fed or they are being asked for behaviors or connection.
Yep.
And
Yep.
then there's this harsh stopping point when
Right.
you go through that gate.
Right. And then it all
And the dog,
stops. Everything
it all
else,
stops.
everything stops.
And here's this is a twofold problem, kind of dichotomous in a way, because it's a problem because the food stops, but also because in training it generally doesn't stop, right?
Right.
So we could fix that dramatic change. We go through that gate and there's no food if we did the same thing in training. But we're not going to, because training, I always tell people, you're not running the marathon in training. You're going to run 4 or 5 obstacles and reward, the sequence or the piece or the skill that you got that you wanted. And you're expected
Yeah.
to, and you're crazy to not do that. But how do you otherwise then don't feed to the gate and then climb through that gate and now your dog has
Right.
nothing. The
Well, and of course,
transition.
sorry, I was just gonna say the other
Oh,
part of that is that the part of the handler that happens, right, is we also flip a switch like in our brains, in our energy when we walk into the line too. So like it's like that you walk through that magic portal and it's all
yes.
different. Like you're
You're
different, the
different, the
dog's
food's
different.
different. And I
Yeah.
always talk about we talked about this earlier, but the compression of, I had this woman a few weeks ago. She's a lovely Pomeranian, and she trains at the place that we trial many classes a week. And she couldn't understand. I think she was a novice or open at this time. She couldn't understand why her dog was so different. And I took her shoulder and I turned her around to look at the arena. And I said, "Does this look like Tuesday night class?" And she's like, "Oh no." And I said, "Do you think it smells like Tuesday night class to your dog?" "Oh no." "Do you think it
How-
feels like?" So
right, the
so
energy, yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think I and I know people know this. We just go into, I mean, we've all heard somebody come out of the ring and we've said it ourselves. I don't understand they'll do that in training. Why won't they do it here? And I think it's because we can bring this back to our crate to gate. What are you doing in training and in trials that is patterned, predictable, consistent, and clearly communicates to your dog, we're about to go do X. And
Right.
X is agility. And we're at a trial, yes, but we've set ourselves up for success and practice this in training too. And I think that's something where we need to bridge the gap. We need to focus on our crate to gate at a trial. And then we need to see how much of that we can practice just as we would a front cross, a rear cross, a blind cross, a contacts in training. Because
So
I don't think enough people do that.
So I agree. And I want you to break down what you think are like the components people need to pay attention to. But before you do that, can you define or explain? Because I think the Startline listeners know, but I don't know if the mindset listeners know, like how you talk about compression. Because when I heard you talk about it the first time, I was like, oh my God, it's just such a good description of it. So what do you mean? Talk about what you mean by that and that, because I think really once you understand what's happening in that moment, then it changes how you set yourself up for that moment.
Right. So the ring is large, right? We have 100 by 100, 80 by 120s. We have, 80 by 100. We have rings that are fairly large. And but we have a very compressed start line. We have 15 to 20 feet from the ring barrier to the first obstacle. We
And smaller
have
for obedience and rally and some of those other things.
right,
Yep.
right. For obedience and rally, sometimes you're walking right into a judge.
Yep. Yep.
For agility, in our area, we have a facility that does not like to move its table and scribe. So right to your right is your table and scribe. Right directly behind you is the leash runner, who this weekend I had to actually, and I haven't had to do this, but advocate for your dog. She was lovely. I this is not to disparage leash. She was just trying to do her job, but she kept inching up trying to grab my leash, and I was like, I looked back and I said, "Can I please have some space?" And she was but
Yeah.
you've got that leash runner right there, ring crew, chairs, equipment, and then dog bum smells, for lack of,
Yep. Yep.
how many dogs sat in
Have
that very
sat in
same
that
spot right
spot.
before you?
Yep.
And what do dogs gather the most information from?
Right.
They're bums, right? They just want to go up and be like, "What did you eat today?
Right.
Who are you?" It's their P-mail. It's all that information right there on the floor. And, sometimes there could be bitches in season. I don't know if I'm supposed to, but whatever. There's all kinds of stuff there.
Yep.
That's the physical. Then
Yep.
you have you, you
Right.
now, and I was even aware of this weekend. I was trying really hard. I wanted to get some double Qs and get some points on the board because my dog's going down for a spay, and I got the butterflies in my stomach. I got that, and I was like, "Kara, you've come to this line literally thousands of times. This is not a Macapac. This is not a Julie Grant. This is nothing, and you're amongst friends. Like
Right.
there's like no stress. You're not." And I still just got all weird, and I know my dog feels it, and I know, you know.
100%.
So I just had to
Sure.
go in there, and this is where now I'm at the gate. This is where my gate ritual helps me because I've recently switched collars. because there's this collar maker near us that makes these phenomenal collars, but they're slip over the head. And I had previously been leaving a collar on Wendy, but I'm not a fan of that D ring going click, 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 hitting
Mm,
on her
mm-hmm,
plastic bit.
mm-hmm.
Um, but I used to hold the collar and then put my hand in front of her face like a race car and just be like, wait. And I had to figure out a new way to do that because she seems to really like that because Wendy does stress on her start line. I have an incredible lead out with this dog. But if I use it, she doesn't come off the line. She doesn't like it.
Got it. All right. So finish the
So,
compression because I think that's
yeah.
getting
So
into some good, juicy, great
So we
gait
walk
stuff.
in. Now we get in the dog's face. We have to somehow take the leash off. Now I know some people can carry their dog in, take the leash off. Some people get the dog in on leash, pop it off right away. Those are all great suggestions. I have a very powerful 63-pound dog that would visit ring crew if I did that. I'm not, I have to set her up, get in her face to lean over her somehow, some way, and take her collar off. So now we've got more, if you want to think about it, the compression, it's just pressure being pushed in from all these different angles,
Uh-huh.
right?
Uh-huh.
I'm drawing like a ball with my
Yep.
hands, but you can't see. It's a pressure cooker.
Yeah, it
And
is. And you think about all that happens in like less than 2 square feet, right? Like
right.
all of that comes down to this moment. And,
And you're
you know,
panicking, you're looking to see when to come in, make
yeah,
sure you get it at the right time. Did you get the go? I was in a very busy
right.
touring and I was looking for I didn't hear the go. So I was looking to see the 60 on the time thing, but each ring's different. I couldn't find the time thing. The judge is like, hello. I'm like,
I'm
I know, I was trying
I'm sure
to
that judge was too. Yeah.
judge. So it's just you have the dog has this compression physical environment and then you have this time crunch of get in there. Also, the dog before you might not be great.
Yep.
I've had to watch dogs before me. They could either be my dog's best friend or a nemesis, and I have to make certain that they get control of that dog while at the same
Yep.
time not upsetting the judge, while at the same time they have their dog on leash. Well, where's the leash
Right.
runner? Where is the table? Does the table know that
Right.
this is my dog? There's so much that happens in less than 30 seconds
Yeah.
and so much, compression. So you walk into this big open ring that's really just one tiny little stress ball.
Yeah. And I love the way you talk about it. And I think that more people should like kind of break it down like you're doing, right? And almost like sit and journal with like all the things that are happening in that moment. Because I think that as handlers, we don't appreciate what it takes to walk from the opening of the gate to the start line. And like you said, could be 15 feet, could be 3 feet, depending, and like all of the things that happen in that moment. And we don't give it enough credit. And so, therefore, we don't practice it as much. We don't figure out, well, what are the things I can predict? What are the things I can take out of it, make easier? So, we just don't realize it. So, thank you for breaking that down. All right.
Well, I
So,
think a lot of
now,
it, well,
sorry.
yeah, the components. Yeah, we'll get
Yeah.
into the components, but I think a lot of that also has to be knowing the components and advocating for your dog. So I
Yes.
would say there's four components. We have the opening the crate and coming out. We have the lining up, and then we have the it depends on the I go to a very specific place that has you line up and then you're outside the gate. So I guess this could be three components for normal
Oh.
people. Like this weekend, it would just be three components. It's a crate,
Right.
you wait, and then you go through the gate. But
Yeah.
where I trial a lot, it's a get you come out of your crate, you go into literally it's like stanchions
Well,
at
and is
a
there a practice jump in there, like for those or warm
no,
up?
no. So
Right.
this is a COVID residual. We actually like it.
Mm.
It used to be the cafe. They line us up in these stanchions. We zigzag through, and then you have your right outside the gate, ready to go. Pressure of the people, the dog behind you, the secretary's dog over in the corner. Like that's where you have that. So I guess there's technically three components, but four if you have this pre lineup issue
Got it.
because the cafe in my area is a problem for a lot of people. And when I'm gate, you'll find some hiders. They'll avoid the cafe. They'll come down
Well, the
super late.
cafe reminds me of like big national events though too, where they like make you get in a queue or a aisle or a tunnel or something like that that you like is artificial in that it's not a natural thing
It's a
to do
whole
or not
nother
something that
tight
you're
environment,
yeah.
and you have a
Yeah.
wall. And so I think that's what makes it big. The biggest
Well,
difference is
and the
when
energy of
yeah,
everybody. your energy, my energy, like the other handlers, like all the energy in that compressed space, it really you really start to feel that too. I get
Well,
it.
we
That
we also have interesting issues in there too because some people have barking dogs
yeah.
and other people don't like barking dogs. I actually love it. People are like, "Oh, I'm sorry." I'm like,
Yeah,
"You're
and
not
I'm the
bothering
don't
me,
like
but
it
you can talk."
person.
Yeah. So it really, you see those people struggle. Meanwhile, I'm trying to rev up Wendy, but keep her from barking. Yeah. So there's, again, three
Yeah.
components, but there's that fourth one if you're in those unique situations where you have this cafe stanchion lineup before the ride. But so technically, there's the open our gate, staging, and then going through, sorry, open our crate, then going through
Yep.
the gate into the ring. And so when you open the crate, and this is silly, many of my dogs and most dogs would just shoot out or come out or stretch or whatever. I and I'm having this with my puppy too, so I know this is a me problem and not my dog's problem.
Can't wait
Um,
to hear this.
I overtrain the crate, and so my dogs don't want to come out because by staying in, because
They
the
get
doors will be
rewarded.
open in my house, and if I catch them in a crate, I pay them. So
Right.
why come out? Why come out? So I've now had to introduce a whole nother Wendy has to. I open the crate, and you can ask my friends. My friends used to have to actually come by and call her out for me.
Oh
It
my
was bad
God.
because
That's
I
really
can't drag
funny.
this 63-pound dog out. So, anyways, now we do a strong touch. She comes out. I do the rear legs. I stretch them myself. Sometimes they do that
Okay.
themselves, but and then I ask my dogs. I've trained them to go into a bow and do their own front stretch. I call it stretch and betchin'. We do that. Then I have to scritch the shoulder blades, and while I'm doing that, I then ask for a kiss. That is like the first 3 seconds we've come out of the
So
crate.
the thing I think that's interesting, right, is because we could each go down our line and change it dog to dog and like all the past dogs and all the things that we would do. But I think that what is important as people are designing those first 3 seconds, right, for their dog, for their unique dog, what is it that you are trying to accomplish? Like, what
I am
is
trying to
your
accomplish,
goal?
I am trying to figure out my dog's attitude. How does
Got it.
she feel? And if she stretches, my most stressful dog would not stretch until like the last year of her life.
Okay.
Um, Wendy will stretch, Debbie stretched, Walter stretched. So stretching is part of this is borrowed a little bit from Sarah Stremming's start button behavior. What behavior can you ask for or expect and get at a level that tells you the dog is ready, right?
That.
So
I
some people
love
will
that.
do,
That's really
yeah.
important.
Um, and so Wendy's a big kisser. If she will not kiss me, something's up. She's not ready, right? So
Yep.
when she's down in that stretch, which to a dog is a relaxing, stress relieving behavior, but if you've trained
Mm-hmm.
a behavior, it can sometimes just be a
A
behavior and not
trick.
the actual physical stress. Or sorry, stretch. I
Right.
want my dogs to stretch. I don't care about the trick. I want them to physically stretch out their shoulders. And so sometimes my dogs will give me a half stretch, and there's no cookie afterwards. The behavior's already trained. The cookie comes much later. So if they give me a half stretch and they're just performing the
Yep.
ritual without being into it, that gives me information. I might not have a dog.
Right. Right.
I have a dog that's just going through the motions as opposed to performing the ritual. And I think that's a big difference. You can gather a lot of information in those first 3 seconds.
Yeah, you can. But again, the reason I ask like what your goal is I think that people there's so much of this that is habit or just robotic or you're just doing it because you've always gotten your dog out of the crate like that. Like you're on dog 7 and you've just always done it the same way and you don't even really know why you're doing it. And I think it's also a moment as a handler we can be really in our heads because we're thinking about what's next or maybe we went to the crate to get them a little bit late or it's raining outside and they don't want to go potty in the rain or whatever. So our minds are 7 steps ahead. And to be present enough in that moment for you to be able to get a lot of information from whether they stretch or kiss you is a big deal. But it only
Yeah.
works if you are present and you are listening in that moment and you are not already thinking about like, oh, who's on the line, who's in the ring, what's going, you know what I mean? If your head isn't somewhere else.
Yeah. And that's also giving me information for staging. So if I don't have a dog,
Yep.
when I go to staging, I have to find, this is outside of the gate. You're lined up 3 to 4 dogs hanging out in the area. I have to make certain that I have space because now I need to rev her up. I need to grab her little tootsies and I need to play our little games, see if I can get her to speak. If she comes out and she does a deep stretch, and she was doing it this weekend, she came out, she was pulling her back legs out of, I call it
Oh, yeah, yeah.
like baby seal. They put
Yeah,
their,
yeah, yeah.
she was doing that. She was stretching herself. I was like, okay, I had a dog all weekend. I had a great dog all weekend. My handling, on the other hand, but
So
so
do you
this
take them out
weekend,
to potty in between the staging and the crate?
so I do not, but many of my friends do, and I'll tell you why. Wendy is this strange. Debbie was the same way. Walter, yes, I did with Walter.
Yeah.
They could go hours to the
Yeah,
point where I
that's
would say go
Moxie.
potty. I would say go potty. Debbie would fake pee
Yeah,
just to go
Indy would
back in the
fake
building
pee.
to run. Yeah.
Yeah, I taught Indy so well to potty on command that if she didn't have to go, she would fake it and stand right up,
Yes.
back up. And she'd be like, "We good?" And I'm like, "Fine."
Yes.
And most of my dogs, I've always pottied before in that it's
Correct.
part of their warm up though. Like I care mostly that they're like moving around and they're warming up and I can see their energy at that point. But Moxie will not potty beforehand. I have a feeling Kelsey, my puppy's going to be that way too. But right now she's just so distracted. She doesn't know. She's like, "Oh, is that a bird?" Like she doesn't know anything. But then it changes my pre-crate, I'll call it ritual, and that Moxie has to have a really good long walk. And it can't
Yes.
be 6 hours before she runs because I know that's the walk she's going to potty on, not before she walks in the ring. So
Yes. And I
yeah, so
definitely
now
do have
that's
a
different.
pre coming out of the crate routine.
Yeah.
I walk because if she's in these deep slumbers, because Wendy's just a hard sleeper. She's just
Yeah.
because she goes hard, she sleeps hard.
Yeah.
So I will wake her up. I try to do it within 45 minutes to 20 minutes prior to my run or my
Yep.
walk, depending on where I am in the line. If I'm close in the line, I'll do it before my walk. Sometimes I'll do the walk, and then if I have 45 dogs ahead of me, I'll walk her first, right after the walk, like right after the walk. Let her settle for a little bit and just kind of chillax, but not fall back asleep,
Mm-hmm.
and then do my crate, take her out, stretch her, kind of thing. So yeah, but potty does not happen in between. But my friends do it, and Walter, I always had to. I had
Yeah.
to go downstairs, but he didn't take long. He's a boy. So, it, you
Well,
know,
and I know a lot of dogs potty right after because again, a lot of times and even in humans, when you have to pee, it can be a release of adrenaline. Like
yeah.
that's actually what's happening in your body. Also, hot flashes, like why you have to pee in the middle because your body, as soon as it releases that adrenaline, it's part of that shedding of it, which is, I don't know, mildly interesting to me anyway. All right, so
Yeah.
staging, go to staging.
Staging. So, depending on what dog I have, the information that I've gathered from my stretching and my
Yep.
kisses, I'm either doing relaxing massages. I do her shoulder blades and they go down, and I whisper sweet nothings in her ear and tell her she's amazing, just because that makes me
Yep.
feel good.
Yep.
Because I'm like, look at this incredible beast. Or I don't have a dog and now I need a dog, and I'm grabbing her feet, I'm making her bark, I'm rewarding her with tugs, and then she does this thing that people got to see this weekend. She tugs so hard she'll flop herself down, and then she loves to be dragged on the turf. Loves it. And there were people there that know me in New England but didn't know me in Pennsylvania, and they saw me with Wendy and they're like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I know you didn't see me do this in New York because we can't do it on the cement floor that right
Oh,
before
right, right,
the
right.
different
But she's like, ooh,
each."
turf. Yeah.
Yeah, so my staging routine will change based on the environment in which I am in.
Right. Right. Which is hugely
Um,
important.
it's hugely important. You've got to know where you are, and that's why going in early and seeing the setup and seeing where you're going to be staging and what the ring space is like. In New Hampshire, there's very little ring space. You've got the cafe, so you've got to figure out everything in there. When she's active and I like to do her spins and get her, I have to be careful because the cafe is tile floor and they have
Oh,
these little
right.
patched rugs. So we have to we have to hop to our
Yeah.
little rug. Just all of these. I mean, I could go into so many details. I'm such a nerd on this, but
No,
only
but I think
because
that's
I've,
good. That's the point, is that you're thinking through that. And the point is to think through these things ahead of time as much as possible and to start to figure out what works so that when you get there, because you're thinking a lot about it talking to us, but you don't think about it when you do it anymore. It's just so normal
because
that
it's
you're just like,
ritualized.
yeah, it's ritualized. And the reason I like, for instance, the reason I started using the word ritual, which is could just be habits, could just be, I don't know, 100 different like synonyms, is because I want them to be non-negotiable. I want them to be so important and that no matter what, you are going to do your rituals or whatever. So like that's what that so yeah, so you're doing all these non-negotiable things, most of which just comes easy. You don't even think about doing. I mean, I ask handlers all the time when I coach them, I'm like, well, tell me about your rituals. And they're like, well, I don't know if I have any. And then they tell me what happens. I'm like, you have them. You're just maybe not thinking of them. And the trick to me, the only difference is when you think of them as consciously as you were thinking about them and you're describing them, you're fully present. So they're meaning more, and therefore they're having a greater effect
They actually
versus as
become
dispensaring your way
feelings.
through. Right.
They
Yes.
actually become feelings. Somebody said to me the other day,
Huge.
oh, we were out socializing the puppies in a baseball field, and my friend was like, "Should we get back?" And I was like, "No, we're okay." And we were there, and I said, "Okay, we should go." And we come back, and it was like 10 minutes before the walk. She goes, "How'd you know?" I said, "It's just a feeling. You
Yeah.
do this enough that you just feel it." And so my rituals are important to me because I need to go on feelings because thinking sometimes is hard.
Right.
And if I can remove the thinking and save it for good lines and handling in the
Right.
ring where it matters the
Right.
most, then we talked about this earlier with Steve Jobs always wore a black turtleneck and jeans because he never had to think about what he wore in the morning.
Exactly
It was
right.
one less thing for him to worry about. And so for me, my ritual and knowing it and gathering the information from it helps me process what I need to do in the ring. Because that ritual, the coming out of the crate and the staging all tell me what's going to happen inside the ring,
Yeah.
right? If I have a poo poo dog or she's too tired or I have a jacked up dog, that's going to give me information about my lead out. Because when I do a walkthrough, I'm planning for do I have a lead out today or do I not? When she's
Got
jacked
it.
up, I can lead out for days, right? I got some lead outs this weekend because she was jacked. When she's poopy, no, I need to run that line without, she
Yeah.
needs me beside her.
So
So
that brings up a
I'm
great point.
gathering that
So
information.
what do you do when it's not going right? Like what do you do when you get through your staging, you're mostly through your cafe or whatever, and you're like, oh, I don't like this. Like for whatever reason, whatever the feedback, whatever reason, whatever energetic reason that you're feeling, like what then? Because then you're right. You at a point they're going to push you into the ring. You're going.
So you have to be strategic. You have to find this out early enough. For me, it was people are always motivating to my dogs. I have boxers, they just love people. So my Phoenix, who would often get very sad, I would note where her people are. And I
Mm.
might have to go up to like the gate might be one of her people. And she had like 10 to 20 people. And I'd be like, can you poke? Can you, I would call it spice. Can you spice up beans? And so they would be like, da, 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 and they give her little claws and whatever. Because when I try, she's like, no. So I
Now.
would find her people, right?
Okay.
With Wendy, if I'm touching her footies and that's not working, I just go let her say hi to somebody, right? Because she'll just wiggle up. I'm like, I'll sometimes go up to the gate, like I'm looking over and I'm at the leash, say,
Yeah,
and the
sort of.
gate people, they're all dog lovers and they're like, hi, what was in your face? And she just loves that. It's like
Right.
they don't even know they're doing it. I'm not being one of those rude people letting my dogs in other people's dogs' faces. No, I'm going up to
Right.
a gate steward who is generally should be a dog
A
friendly
dog
person.
person. Yeah.
Yes, and they're inadvertently, or sometimes they're like, oh, is it okay if I pet? I'm like, pet away. So that is specific to my breed and my dog, but I find that's my emergency outlet. When I get down there and I go, oh crap, and I say down there because we have those stairs at
Yep.
canine country.
I figured.
Um, when I say that, I'll be like, okay, I don't have a dog. And I've said that. I found that if I say I don't have a dog, that is very bad for my mindset because then I
Mm,
project on myself and
sure.
my dog that I don't have a
Exactly
dog.
what's going to happen. Well, and you
And then my dog's
project
like,
all the way through the course, right?
yes,
You're already at the finish line because you're like, I don't have a dog, therefore I might as well just walk to the out gate because it's not going to work.
yes. So the
And then you
worst thing you
run
can
under
do is
that
acknowledge
brain.
that. The best thing
Yes.
you can do is go to default behavior, and that might be you move from cheese to sausage, or you give a higher rate of reinforcement, or you ask for their favorite trick. where they roll over or play. I do bang with Wendy a lot. She loves that, to flop her body down. That takes her out of a completely different mindset. So you have to have default behaviors, and you have to find out early enough, you know,
Yeah.
that whether you have that dog or not, or what type of dog you have, the morose or the, jacked up,
Yeah.
ready to go.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm doing an online class right now for obedience. And it's interesting because these exact behaviors and this exact conversation is coming up. And in agility, in a way, we are blessed in that we have a lot of time, or cursed, right? But we're usually sort of hanging around the ring, five or so dogs out. In like obedience, I mean, sometimes they're in the ring for 5 minutes. So the last thing you want to be
Yeah.
doing is being lined up for 10 dogs. My God, it'd be like, an hour, potentially, right? So I think that, how you handle that, again, we have to figure out what those behaviors look like for the different rings or different scenarios, different environments, and how you gauge where is my dog? Are they too up, too down, just right? Like, it's a Goldilocks problem. And how do you
You know
manage
what's interesting that I just thought of between the sports? I've done rally, I haven't done obedience, but in rally, and I would assume this is an obedience, you're part of your warm up routine, I'm sure, is practicing like tighter sits or
that? Yep.
getting in. And we don't do that in agility. Why don't we
No,
stand there
right.
and do rear crosses on the flat behind our dog or like,
Right.
that's just silly.
Right.
Just sorry, just
We
there's my
no, but
mind
it's
for you.
true. It's so true. And what's funny is I think that in obedience, when I watch people and train and they're doing all that kind of stuff, I think, well, God, I hope you're not fixing it right now. Do you know what I mean?
Right,
Because I
right.
do feel like I've watched it and I've known that I've had a weakness, so I go and I work that weakness, right? And often it happens in rally because you can practice the actual, like you walk the course, you know what the signs are, so then
Yeah.
you're over there practicing, your backup or whatever, and just trying to like get it at the last minute. And you're right, with agility, I don't think like, oh, I'm gonna have a problem with that rear cross. I better practice it real quick.
But even just
And
running through it in your head, I might try this. I
yeah,
think it would be good for your mindset, because I always preach to people,
well, some of
particularly
us
my
call it
students.
visualization.
Right, I have a lot of students that have trouble visualizing, but if
Yep.
you just visualized and took the course and shrank it, sat your
Yes.
dog and said,
Correct.
"Okay, I'm gonna front cross here, I'm gonna rear cross," and just moved around them,
Oh,
they're
I
gonna be
do
like,
that.
"Okay."
Like
I don't,
I see what I
but I
do is
think more
I'll walk
should.
I walk the course a few times and then I think I got it. Then I'll go stand at the end of the ring and I'll do that
Yes, and
sort
I
of
do
weird
that. I do the
fancy
construct,
thing by
conductor.
myself.
Yep.
And then if I get stuck on a certain section, like it's not flowing easy, then I'll go back out and walk that piece.
Yeah, no,
You
that I
know?
do. I'm talking about with your dog and staging.
Yeah. I mean, I do
See,
it.
I do that. I absolutely do that in my walkthrough. I finish after like 6 minutes. I go in some corner because usually they leave like a chunk open,
Sure.
and I'll close my eyes and make sure. If I can't, then I peek. Then I close my eyes again, and then if I still can't, then I go back out and walk it again.
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
exactly.
but it. I don't know. I'm not
Yeah, I
saying,
think it's
because
good. I
you and
just
I. Yeah,
No, no, I was gonna say,
I
I think it's good. I think that the danger is, for me, is that make sure that you're still connected to your dog. Because when I do that in the ring, and when you do that in the ring after we've walked, I don't have a dog to worry about. It's just me. I'm
right.
getting it in my head. So when you're doing it with your dog, I love the idea. Almost like I've literally told the dog the course, right? I've literally sat there and I've been like, and then it's a rear, and then we're doing this, and then it's tire, and then we're going to do the A-frame, and
Yeah.
then going to go up and da da da. And I swear the times that I've done that, whether you talk through it or you envision talking to your dog, my runs go better. Now, is it the clarity that I have in my mind? Is it working because my dogs pick up on all of these things and more than we give them credit for sure? Like, what is working about it? I don't know, but it works. So keep doing it.
Yeah, no, I just had that thought where I'm like, wow, those, because you were talking about
Hmm.
how different the
Yeah.
sports are, but we don't do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah. So information is gathered. I have my default behaviors, and then it's like, okay, game time. You're being called into the ring, and I think every single piece of these comes with a caveat of too much time or too little time. Right? You could
Yes.
open that crate and be ripping your dog out and have to go, or you could be opening that crate and stalling and taking a little bit longer because you opened it 10 dogs
Too
instead of the seven you
early.
wanted. Yeah.
Right.
So I think that's important too, because the more we can be consistent with our dogs, the less they have to think this is different. We don't want them to think anything's different but the environment of the day, right? We want
Right.
them to just know, like, oh, well, this is the lead up to going in the ring and doing this stuff. And then you have the going through the gate. I hope and wish that more people would be more mindful just physically going through the gate. How many times do you see somebody like cut their dog's tail off or beat their dog in the face with the gate? I'm like,
I
guys,
know.
what? You see these dogs like they're scurrying by.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
a stressor for your dog.
Yes.
Be
Yeah.
mindful of the damn
Yeah.
door.
They're like, "Oh, I wonder if my beloved owner will try to hit me with this thing before we walk to the
Yes.
line."
So, if you're having a little bit of stress with, I would just first start off with how you getting your dog physically over the threshold.
Well, and here's an idea, right? Have somebody, I mean, everybody's got their videos running, right? Have somebody
Right.
video and start the recording earlier. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and you watch that instead of like when you get your video, like look away as it's like kind of loading and you're waiting for your dog to get to the line. No, watch your video of like you coming in to the line and see what that tells you. Like, where was your dog looking? Where were you looking? What were you thinking? Like, that's actually more information you could be getting. And did you hit your dog in the butt on their way in?
Yes. The amount of times I see that, it just, because, up here in the Northeast, we have either the Mad or the Max
Yeah.
um, gates. And you either have this very thin plastic gate that tends to close quickly and it bites them more than it hurts them. And then you have the Mad one that's like metal and this wood, this hardwood again. It's
Yeah.
big, it's
Well,
substantial.
and you sometimes you really have to push the mad one. Like that's the one I'm
Yes.
used to too.
We
You really you
I
have
now
to
know you
I
have to
have to do
grab
the
the
finger
metal and just,
thing. Yeah, yeah,
yes, you have
yeah,
to do the finger thing.
yeah, yeah.
Otherwise, I sit there going, "How do I get into this ring? How
Right.
do I get into this ring? I
Right.
can't
And
find
you're
the
like
joint."
Push.
Yeah,
Got it.
because my adrenaline's starting. So, yeah,
Right.
I
No.
think I
Yeah.
think the physical, not just the barrier, but the actual gate, I think people need to be mindful of. And, are you dragging your dog in? Are you walking beside your dog? Are you sending your dog in forward? I'm not saying anything's right or wrong, but that could make a big difference.
Yeah. But
The
what's the
people have to
energy of
turn
that
around.
moment? Right? What's
Yeah,
the energy of that moment? Are you happy if your dog runs by you and pulls you in the ring? Are you happy about that because they're ready to go? Or do you feel out of control and does that make you nervous? Depends on the dog, depends on what you're going for. It depends on like a million things. That's why these have to be so customized.
yeah. I actually, one of the things I let Wendy do to get her excited is I let her go right as we're about to go in. I do not disturb anyone's run, but I let her look through this weekend. It was the Mad Gate. So you have this kind of like
Yeah, yeah, those little
oval,
slats.
oblong slat. And I looked through and I'm like, you want to do agilities? Are you ready to go play? And then she'll muzzle punch it. And that's a big start
Nice.
button behavior. I haven't asked her for it, but when she does that, I'm like, we are good to go.
Nice.
Right? And then I go, "No, no, no, it's not your turn yet." And we have this stupid little exchange that, like, is all happy because now I'm like, "Yes, I
Well,
have a
now you're
dog that wants to
relieved.
run."
I mean, honestly,
Yes,
sometimes when we get that
yes,
information back, we're like, oh, okay, phew. Okay, they're here. I have my dog that I wanted, that I was hoping I would have today. Like, great, let's go. Yeah,
yeah. Then you walk through the gate, you haven't hit them, so you're winning.
you're good. Yeah.
And you walk in and the amount of people that are, like, pulling their dog's head up because it wants to drive
Right.
down to that concentrated compression butt
Sniffy
smell.
butt smart.
Yes,
Yep.
it's just so it that's where you have to be mindful. And can you walk in, maybe you walk in on a heel, you know you have that dog up looking at you adoringly and you're like, we're going to get this, we're going to do this.
Yeah.
Because if you go in and you have to manage right away,
Right.
you're setting
You're
yourself up for failure and your dog. You should
right.
not you should default to management for safety, but you shouldn't default to management to have a good run, if that
Yeah,
makes sense. Like, manage your dog from chasing the next dog running in line. I know sometimes that happens and people are like, whoa, when the dog's going crazy.
for
But
sure.
if you have to go in and pull your dog's face up, I would come up with, instead of having to constantly pull my dog's face up, and I'm working with this woman that has a Portuguese water dog that has an insatiable need to sniff the ground. Insatiable. It's beyond just stress. This dog, it is highly rewarding for him. It is
Interesting.
just, yeah, it's been an issue in every sport. And he's not a stressed dog. He's a very big male boy. And
Mm.
I mean, he'll sit there and he does that pervy licking. Like, he's
Yeah.
just, yeah,
Perfect.
And just to say that I know the difference between sniffing
Right.
and
Yeah, yeah,
just,
yeah.
yeah,
No, I
yeah.
have boys too. I get it.
Right. So we're working really hard on, his up, instead of just
Hmm.
look, because her look was toxic. It became contaminated. So we do
Yeah.
up, and that needs to be a behavior. You need to be proactive instead of reactive. If you know your dog is going to go through the gate and drive down, you need to ask them for an incompatible alternative behavior beforehand, and you need to have taught it and rewarded it, so that
Right.
looking at you is way more
Right.
interesting than sniffing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, the flip side is if you have stress, okay, well, then you have stress, then you need to address the stress that's causing the sniffing. But there are some dogs that are just like, let me take this in, because
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
is phenomenal.
Yeah.
We've put, by the end of day one, there's
Oh my
350
God.
butts that sat in one place.
Right. And I don't think anybody thinks about it.
No.
Like I don't think anybody thinks about it. I'm thinking about it now and I'm thinking that, I always one of the things I do when I walk the course is I walk off how far I have to set my dogs up, how
Yep.
far
Yep.
back. And because, those of us with bigger dogs, we have to think through these things, And I think I'm lucky because I'm way back. I want her to
Yeah.
have like a small and a big stride, like a get out of sit kind of stride and then a real stride before she leaves the ground. And so that means that I am usually 12 to 15 feet. Like I'm at her butt is at the gate kind of thing
Yeah.
because in some rings it's crunchy. And which is also something I have to practice. The first time I sit her down, if her tail's touching, that's going to bug her. Right. So you
Yeah.
have to think all that stuff through. But I think I'm out of sniff zone, I think is what
Yeah.
that's coming to
Well,
is because no one
I
else
not
is
only
back
look,
there with me.
I always look at sniff zone, but I also look, there's always, and it's inevitable. The Berners, the Shelties, the Border Collies that went before me, the Husky, the owner that was
The
feeding them
hair.
cheese, it sticks in their damn chest fluff. And then they sit on the line and I watch it drop, and my dogs are like, ding, 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 ding. So I actually walk in, and sometimes I'll just hold my dog back a little bit and I'll kick or pick up that cheese and toss it out of the ring. There's people that I follow in New England that I'm like, you're a dropper. And again, not their fault. They're like pounding the cheese in the face
Right.
right
Yep.
before they go in the ring, or the
Yep.
dog is like, and it just comes up. And so it's just,
Yeah.
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I have, as you can tell, not fuzzy dogs.
Yeah. You and I have very different grooming habits.
Yes. So
All right.
I have
So
to inspect the sniff spot
yeah.
for, because my dogs are going to drive down, and not, I've had my dogs come up, find a piece of cheese, and stay there for like 20 minutes. I'm like, it happened. Well, this weekend I had an issue. So I have this puppy, and she is best friends with my Wendy, and she has shredded her neck. Like, Wendy allows actual biting. And
Oh
so
my
Wendy has
God.
scabs. And so
Oh
when we
my
came to the
God.
line, I would take her collar off with an irritate her neck. This was not stress. She does have stress, but this was
Right.
legit.
You were
And it was for
literally
like,
irritating her neck. Yeah.
and I was literally irritating the judges because she was, and they're probably sitting there thinking the dog's. I was like, look at her neck; it is shredded. When I dropped her off for the spay today, I was like, "Hey, heads up!" They're like, "Has anything changed in her life?" I said, She's not dying, but I have a
Yeah.
puppy that."
You could put some ointment on that. That wouldn't
Yeah,
kill
I
you.
have been. I've been putting, yes.
No, I
Anyways,
meant them. Yeah.
so yes, so it's one of those things that I had an extenuating circumstance where I was like, I initially thought I was stressed, and my friend was like, "Look at her neck; it is shredded." Oh, right, there's little scat,
That's
so it's
funny.
itchy.
That's
So
funny.
yeah, it's all these things that happen
So, okay,
in that
so
compression zone.
in like to summarize, which is not even really possible, but like then how do people practice these? Well, let me ask it differently. I think some of us just practice these or just think it's going to get better by just going to another trial, going to another trial, going to another trial. And some people are experimenting, they're experiment one weekend. So I love those people because they're trying to figure it out. That's great. But is there a way to work on this or aspects of this without trialing because you're in a different kind of environment? Like it just feels like we should know a lot of this before we put them in a competition environment. Like what can we do ahead of time?
You should be doing it in training, which so few do.
So few.
And
Yeah.
you should be bringing a crate to training class, or if you're going to crate out of the car, great. You need to be imagining, if you haven't trialed, do the best you can. But otherwise, if you've trialed a few times, you need to imagine and treat it like you're going into a trial.
Yeah.
And it just, you have to focus on, because here's the thing that the crate to gate routine, well, it gives you a routine, but here's what studying it does. It gives you information about the success of your runs and setting your dog up for success, right? It's just like laying out your clothes. If your dog stretches at XYZ point, then you know you're potentially good. If your dog will give you a kiss, then you know you're potentially good. If your dog is, staying connected in the staging area and not sniffing, then you're good, right? If you can get through the gate and your dog doesn't put its head down, you're good. I
Yeah.
think you just need to be more mindful of what we do from crate to gate, because if you have trialed a few times and you are having issues, either you just don't know what to do, then practice it in training, because the more you normalize it there,
Yes.
the more because here's what
Yeah.
we're not going to do. We're not going to compromise on. I would never tell somebody to not have food in the ring at training. I scream
Right.
constantly, give your dog a cookie. So we already know we can't change that in trials, but we can make everything else leading up to that as normal and predictable as
Yeah.
possible and have
Yeah.
that be one of the few differences of trial versus training besides
Right.
the environment.
Well, and I think every once in a while in training, if you want to try to run a full course, like from a mindset perspective, I sometimes encourage people to like walk in and run it like you're going to run it in the trial. And if you make a mistake, you keep going. You do what you
Yes.
would normally do, because also people get into a trial situation, they don't know what they're going to do in a mistake. Oh, should I redo it? If my FEOing it out? Is this fix and go? Like what's happening? And so they don't plan for that. They don't have that experience. The dog doesn't
Oh,
know
that's
what to
another
do.
podcast.
We have 100 of them all just right here. But I think so. I encourage people to like go run it like you have to get it right and try to practice putting that pressure on yourself so that your dog feels what you feel like, what it's like to run with, that version of you and things like that. So, and the other thing I would think that you can practice is your start line behaviors, like whatever those are
Mhm.
going to be. Like I start my dogs in between my legs, and that's just kind of how we get lined up, and it's like a physical connection for us, and I don't have to worry about what side I'm on. I just but I have to practice it,
Yep.
and so and now they know that, oh, if this is how we're starting, this is fun times ahead, like because now it's part of the good energy anticipatory response that I'm getting, yada yada. But I had to train it. It wasn't just like, you know and I now am teaching a class of like very beginner agility, like foundation stuff, and a lot of the people have obedience, and they're all like heeling up to the line, and I'm like, that's great, but then they cross in front of their dog to go to the other side, and I'm like, that's not as great. Let's talk about that. But anyway, so yeah, I think,
Well,
I
I
mean,
totally agree with that. I practice Wendy's setup.
yep.
Phoenix used to come between my legs, and I think in training, that's the time you get to reinforce it,
Yes.
right? So the whole
Right.
part about dog training is when you're first learning a behavior, you pay it, pay it, pay it. Then you turn to a variable reinforcement schedule where sometimes it gets paid, sometimes it doesn't. It makes the behavior more reliable. Then you get to the point where in training, you have the opportunity to reinforce what you can't in trials. And so I think it's super important to not only have that and practice it, but pay it,
Right.
because that's the time you get to. It's the only time you
Yep.
get to.
Yeah, exactly. All
It
right,
builds more meaning and value.
last words of wisdom on crate to gate. Anything we didn't talk about?
I think we covered most of it, but just be more conscious, aware, and thoughtful of what you're doing and what information your dog is giving you. And if it's not what you like or you think they're uncomfortable, change it. Don't be afraid to change it.
Yeah.
And don't change the whole thing. Pick one
Right.
section, one
Right.
component. Either
Right.
pick coming out of the crate or pick the staging part. Maybe you go to a more private area, or maybe you rev them up closer. Like just pick something to tweak and change. And that's what I've been
Yeah.
doing with Wendy. And really, I feel like we're in a good position now. And so I think that's probably the most important takeaway is if things aren't working, look at that. Look at your pre entering the ring routine.
Yeah.
Also look at what you're doing when you go in that ring,
Yeah.
the
Yeah, for
compression
sure. I mean,
zone.
I think I think if I were to walk away from this, I would actually go sit down and like kind of journal it out into those three sections, right?
There's
And
a lot of
think
details to write down.
there is a
Yes.
lot of detail. And then when you really think about it, like I'm sure, like I already know myself, right? Like I'm sure that my weakest part is, um, I don't know, probably walking. Well, no, I do a little bit of the mindless feeding right before because I want to watch and I need that. Like that's part of me, but I want my dog to stick around. So I become like a Pez disp like I'm feeding them and not even looking at them. I could be, another dog could slip in like similar height and I would just start feeding it because it's just right
See, that's
there.
where I
Right.
put Wendy in
And
a bag, and I tell her to stay dead so I can watch.
right.
So she's
Right.
just laying there like a
Well,
lump of
I mean,
obliteration.
yeah, I'm calling myself out, right? I mean, I'm saying like, okay,
Yeah.
we got to stop that. We got to figure out like what that replacement is. So yeah, if I were journaling this out, I would make the three sections and really think through. And then to your point, you change one thing or you focus on one thing and then you make a note. Like, did that work? What was the result? Like, how did that impact it? And yeah, get someone to video you coming in the ring. Video you start that video recording earlier, you know? Yeah, and see what you can
Yeah,
see.
no, that's a good idea. Yeah.
All right.
There's so
Anything
much more I
else?
could talk about.
I
Because now that I'm like
know. I
visualizing and I'm like, oh, there's
know.
so much more that
I
where I store the
know.
treats and where I have the this and the that and then
Yeah, I know. We could get
yeah.
we as usual, we can go for hours
Yeah,
on
there's so
one
much to
topic.
discuss.
I know. I know. I know. So I
Just
will
don't hit
cut
your dog
us
with a gate on the way in. That's it.
right. Yeah, if you get nothing else out of today, please stop beating your dog with a gate.
Yeah. And look
Stop
at
gate beatings.
last little side adjunct. Look at your leash off, coming off routine too. I see a lot of dogs
Yes.
are like, "Ugh." It's just
Yeah,
that right there is a big stressor.
right.
It can be, right?
Can be. Well, mine, it seems
My,
to rev them up. Like when I
yeah,
pull it over their head, they're like, ah,
yeah,
and I'm
that's a
like,
mini,
oh, okay.
we have a mini American Shepherd, Rev is literally his name.
Okay.
I told her, I was like, you need to get a clip collar because every time you pull that off his head, he's like, he comes out like flying.
Yeah.
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 And
And I
my
think,
dogs hated anything coming over their head. They had cropped ears. So I would always just use
oh,
clips.
right.
Now Wendy doesn't. She doesn't seem to care.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think too. So sometimes the other part of that is I've used sometimes I have my training collar and leash versus my trial collar and leash. And
Yeah.
while that keeps my trial collar and leash all like, pretty and fancy, like every
They
once in a
wash
while,
fine.
you gotta practice with the real
Yep.
thing because if suddenly the first time you do that is in the ring, they're gonna be like, what the hell is that?
I
Right?
always practice with my trial leash because my trial leash is my agility leash. I mean, I have 50 of them, but they're
Of
all
course, we all,
like
yeah.
that's
Leash is
my,
anonymous. Yeah.
yes, that's my agility. Like I make sure about that. Even though I
Yeah.
walk in the building and I take it off in 2 seconds where I train, there's not a lot of staging area. I
Yeah.
still use that leash, even though there's zero
Yeah.
point to it. Yeah,
But that matters because they know.
it
They
does.
know the difference. Cool.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna cut us off only because
We could
otherwise
go
it'll
forever.
be
It'll
30
never end.
hours. But thank you as always. Tell our listeners where they can find you.
You can find me at startlinepod.com and also on Facebook. I'm not that great at Instagram. It's all connected, so Facebook is probably a way to go.
Yeah. All right, cool. And your podcast is all the usual places.
It is on all the things: Spotify, Apple Podcasts. It's on Amazon Music. You can find it anywhere.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much as usual. It's awesome to talk to you, and we'll
You
do it
as
again
well.
soon.
Definitely.